Welcome to From Head to Heart and Home. We're excited to have you listen in on our conversation. We are a channel created by women, empowering women to take intentional action to create the life you want. With your host, Shanda Soretti, certified transformational coach, and Carla Center, relationship coach. So today we're going to talk about friendships. And I'm super excited to talk about this because it seems like often we talk about um, how to see who's the right person to have in your life, but we don't really talk about maintaining our friendships. And there is so much more to friendship than at the beginning getting to know each other. The maintaining and creating the relationship that you want and
Mm,
the other person wants is such a super important thing in your life because friendships get you through those rocky things because you know you have somebody you can trust. And we talk often about community. So I'm going to let Shanda take off with this to start.
yeah. Yeah. So I think I'm really excited to talk about this too, Carly, because, this is something that you and I talk about frequently behind the scenes, right? About our friendship and other relationships that we have in our lives as well. And it's something that we really understand. We kind of have the same thoughts and feelings about what that means to us. So, what I want to encourage other people to do is like, listen, there will be a plethora of different types of relationships that you will have in your life and even friendships, right? Like, different people act differently and you'll have different connections with different types of people. But at the end of the day, I think what a friendship really is if you enjoy your interactions with that person, you feel nourished from those interactions. I believe that that is a friendship, right? And it looks different for everybody. So sometimes Carl and I might talk like all day, right? Via text messages or voice messages, off and on all day. And then sometimes we go like a week without talking if we get busy with our own stuff in our own lives because we do live very far away from each other. And so I think just having the understanding and letting go, having the understanding, first of all, sorry, that that person is a part of your life because they want to be and you want them to be, right? So it's a mutual agreement there and vice versa. And also not having expectations on what the relationship has to look like, right? Or what it's supposed to look like. Because I have had that experience in the past with some friends of mine. And for whatever reason, usually from expectation of some sort, those relationships have kind of fizzled off, right? And so when that does happen, or if you feel like you're kind of on the cusp of that, I think doing a little bit of introspection, first of all, right? And asking yourself, like, is this a relationship that I want to maintain? Why or why not? Do I feel nourished or does this drain me? Right? Yeah.
Right. And if you're having some expectations and you realize that possibly this is harming the relationship, look at why do you have these? Because
Mm,
sometimes underneath it all, it has nothing to do with the other person and 100% to do with some of the things that we talk about often in different episodes. Things like I don't feel worthy, so I need this person to nurse that part of me that feels unworthy, and them paying attention to me or them doing this or makes me feel worthy enough. And the moment they step away, when most likely has nothing to do with me, I feel like I'm not important to them. There's I don't feel connected any longer. So really, honestly, it's not just to do with the other person. And we often get caught up in, well, this person doesn't come to me unless one of my things would be that they wouldn't come to me unless they needed something.
mm,
Okay, one of my things was, am I having boundaries with this person? Quite honestly, if I feel that way, number one, have I had boundaries with them? I have to look at that because that is 100% my doing,
yeah.
right? Like we like to say what other people's behaviors are without being accountable for our own.
Mm,
Um, but also, like, where are we feeling insecure in our life that the moment somebody reaches out and says saying, I don't really want to do X, Y, and Z, so I'm not going to do it, and let it be, instead of being like, this person only reaches out to me when they want something.
Mhm.
Like, really, introspection is such a huge thing in relationships, because it can bring up the drama, or it can keep it from happening. And it's 100% our choice. As we say often, we create our world, right? We
Mm.
create our life. And if you can step back, I'm not saying emotions don't come up. We all have them. I mean, there's times when things are a little bit difficult, but if we can step back and just take a look, um, from an outside perspective on what's going on with us, it can lead us down. And we talk about journaling and meditation often. Sit down with it and see what more there is to it, because often it has to do with our own stuff. And even if somebody is reaching out in a way that doesn't feel good, why are we not uh, talking to them and making boundaries around what we want to allow in our lives?
Yeah, I think the boundaries thing is really important for sure. And it's interesting. I heard something recently about boundaries, and if I can get it close enough to what it was, that'll be great. And it was something around a lot of people avoid boundaries because they think it's keeping people out, like it's designed to keep people out or like at a distance. But actually, what I learned was that the way that I heard it was boundaries are for you to be able to understand what you want to keep, like for like how you want to keep yourself. Does that make sense? I hope I'm making sense. I know I'm not nailing what I heard, but that's the idea. It's not to keep people out, it's to for you to be able to honor your needs, right?
Yeah.
And so the boundaries thing is beautiful. And I love this idea, this that we're talking about friendships, because like you were saying earlier, Carla, it really intertwines with so many of the episodes we've already published, right? And one of the things that's coming up for me really big right now is communication. So
Right.
a friendship is a place where you can go to communicate things. And when you can communicate hard things, you know that you have a really deep connection and a beautiful
Right.
relationship with that person. And not to say that communication is easier, right? Because I don't believe that it really gets easier. Like, even when I talk to my partner about some hard things, sometimes, we've been together for, we're going on 5 years here at the beginning of next year. And I'm just like, sometimes it's still hard to have certain conversations. So maybe it gets easier over a long period of time, but I don't know if that's true or not, right? Because our emotions are emotions. And if
Right.
we're kind of feeling a little bit fearful to share something because maybe it feels vulnerable, then that fear is there for a reason, right? It's there to try and protect us. It's not to say don't do the thing. But, anyways, communication is key. So, being able to communicate, if you have specific things that, you would like to talk about or you would like to have happen in the relationship, people can't guess, right? And opening up that communication like two ways, right? So not just looking to be able to confide in somebody, but be that place for somebody else to be able to confide in you. So a relationship, a friendship is a two-way street, right? It shouldn't be all one direction where the other person is the one who always reaches out or vice versa. It should be both ways if we're gonna should all over this, right? Like there's a balance.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's 50-50 down the middle all the time, but depending on what people's lives are like, you're not making anything mean anything other than what it is, right? And so
Right.
what it is whatever they tell you it is, and you trust that that is that. Um, the other thing that I wanted to mention was sharing or celebrating, because this is something that has been a challenge of mine, and still remains to be a challenge of mine, is sharing things that are going extremely well in my life with the people who are close to me is sometimes a difficult task. And the reason is because we are so trained by society that sharing or celebrating can be like bragging or boasting, right? And
Right.
my intention is never to put people down, to put myself above, right? So sometimes I find myself holding back sharing or celebrating with those people in my life. And that is definitely something where we need to be careful because it's funny energetically, like Carla can attest to this for sure. Maybe I'm withholding something that I do want to share with her, but I don't want to come across as being braggy or boasty. And I might not say anything, but she knows something's going on the other end. And she's like, she doesn't know what it is, but she knows something's up.
Yep.
And so she can feel this withholding information, right? And so
Right.
it's funny because this is something that has happened more than once with her and I. And and it's good that we can eventually get to talk about it, right? So we really want to talk about friendships because this is personal to her, to us, right? This is just such a
Right.
special thing that we've developed over our years of knowing each other and something that we're always working on, right? We're always working on it. We're always trying to understand it better and create those healthy boundaries with each other.
Right. And as Shanda talks about communication and the not sharing, both of them have to do with stories that we create in our
Right.
head.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to remember we have been molded by um, the people that have been in our past as well as society. And so we create these stories that put us down a path that doesn't feel right. So if you're in a friendship and you're feeling, I can't share just the exciting news about my life, I feel guilty on or this is how I think they're going to react, or um I just don't want to lose my friendship if I'm too vulnerable, or even with Shanda and I have been with our partners really close to the same amount of time. We're going on 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes you're like the communication is really flowing, and it can be with a friendship or with your partner, and then all of a sudden there's something new and you've never talked about it, and you will revert back to some of the old ways because it's triggered something that's like this story in your mind. And if we allow ourselves to go, oh, this is the old stuff, I have created so much more since this was my pattern, I have to be aware that, oh, it just came up. That doesn't mean that something bad has happened. It just means
Mm-hmm.
this is new because it's a different area of communication. Friendship and relationships have this flow, and then
Mm-hmm.
new things come up. It just is. I mean, we are such multifaceted beings
Yeah.
that we can't know what all and plan ahead as much as we want to have that control.
Yeah.
And it makes me think, like I was talking about boundaries, like boundaries, we think that if we have boundaries, we're taking somebody else's freedoms away. But
Right.
really, we without boundaries, we are so scattered that we don't have this just investment in a relationship with somebody. We're so busy dealing with our own, stroking our egos to keep
Mm.
things going. I want you to like me, so I'm going to do all these things. I won't have boundaries till I burn out, and then our relationship will suffer for it.
Mm.
And communication with and boundaries just create this beautiful thing where we can trust each other to be vulnerable, to be open, honest, and know that sometimes either of us will say things that might be taken the wrong way, but we can process and come back to somebody and get clarification
Mm.
and continue to create this beautiful relationship together that maybe for a moment we're like, oh, this didn't feel good, but we grew from it.
Mm. Yeah. I love what you're talking about with patterns because what came up for me when you were sharing that was, patterns. I believe that patterns are can be a beautiful reminder of our boundaries, right? So like if an old pattern is reemerging, and you're like, oh, hang on a second, this is familiar. This was a pattern, maybe something I worked on, maybe something I healed. Why all of a sudden is it rearing its head again? It could be because maybe you've dropped the ball on one of the boundaries, right? You've forgotten or overlooked those boundaries that you had put in place for some reason. And not to say that your boundaries don't evolve, but I believe as we evolve, so do our
Yeah.
boundaries, right? Like everything
Yeah.
else.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but I truly believe that boundaries are, they allow us, they create a safe space for us to be authentic, right? If we honor our boundaries, that is where we can live in our authentic life, right? Because it's allowing us to live in alignment with our most truest values. That's what boundaries do, right?
Right.
They keep you in integrity with yourself, and that is so important. And when you were talking about like clarifying with communication, it's funny because this just happened to me yesterday. I had received a text message and I wasn't quite sure on what the person was trying to say. 'Cause, I mean, wonderful world of text messages, right? And so I had
Mhm.
I had sent one back trying to clarify, and the reply I got was still just as confusing, but I knew I was going to see that person yesterday in person. So I said, okay, I'm not just going to keep texting back and forth and creating more confusion. I said, I'll just leave it at that. And when I see this person, I will clarify in person through conversation by asking,
Right.
can you just clarify what you meant by blah, 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 blah? So that's what we got to do. And it was so much more effective rather than going back and forth with these texts and trying to decipher. And then all the confusion happens, right? Reading between the lines and the waiting in between the messages and all that stuff. So never shy away from asking for clarification. This is something that
Right.
both Carla and I got to learn in leadership years ago when we took our course together. And it's like not being afraid to just ask, like, what did you mean by that? Or, the other thing too, actually, this is totally really off, very random here, but when you're learning something, if you're in a room, whether it's in person or online, and you're in a room and they're talking about something maybe you don't know, or they said something, a word, whatever that you don't know, don't pretend like you do know. Like ask,
Right.
like, hey, I don't know what that means. Can you clarify? And I'll tell you something, it can feel kind of scary to like initially to put your hand up and be like, I don't know what you mean there. Can you explain? But after you do it, it's like it's so rewarding, right? It feels so good to be like, oh, okay, like I did that for myself. Like I took that stand and said, hey, 1 minute, I need to figure this out. Can you help me? Right? It's very liberating is the word I'm looking for. Yeah. So don't be
Yeah.
shy asking for clarification in conversation with your friends, with um, romantic relationships, maybe even at work, right? Ask for clarification when needed. Yeah. So you know
Right.
what that person means.
Right. And absolutely what Shanda was saying. I had a job where it said if there's 3 emails and you guys aren't understanding, you need to talk in person. And the
Mm,
reason is that sometimes when we communicate, so just be aware that sometimes whatever form of communication we chose is not gonna get the message across to somebody else. So if they ask it, don't take it as something's wrong. It just means they need to communicate with you in a different way to read. As we know, text messages, emails do not have our tone, it does not have our body language. There are so many other cues that we give across in person that we don't give across in these other digital forms.
mhm.
Um, and it's there's something else I was going to say. Now I forgot. Oh, and not knowing something. So, one of the reasons it's scary is because we have this tie to if we don't know something somebody else knows, we're less
Mm,
than. It's that comparison thing. And if we are open to, I'm here to learn from you and you are here to learn from me. And if I'm open about the fact that you're going to know things I don't, and learning from you is a beautiful thing instead of a proof that you're better than me, just be open and understand that your friends, even people you don't know, if you ask questions, they're probably excited to teach you. Just
mm,
like if they had asked you questions, you're probably excited to teach them. And
mm,
it's the beauty of just being open and understanding that we can be afraid of the, again, that's the stories we've told ourselves in our head. If I raise my hand, whatever you think you look like is your own story.
mhm. Yeah, like I feel stupid or whatever, right?
Yes.
The other thing too that I want to share with our listeners today is that I've heard this so many times from really successful people and coaches, and they always say if you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? And I want to go a tiny bit further with that. And because for me, my understanding of that concept is that if you're the smartest person in the room, you don't have the opportunity to grow, right?
Right.
You're within your comfort zone because for some reason you're feeding a story, right? You're feeding one of your stories, you're feeding one of your patterns by
Right.
being like, you feel comfortable when you feel like you know everything that everybody else knows too. So if you are, there's no shame, there's no fault, but stretch yourself. Stretch yourself into a bigger room, get yourself in front of more people so that you can give yourself the opportunity to grow too. I love actually being like, um, one of the I don't even know how to say this in the correct way, but I love not being the smartest person in the room. I am such an inquisitive person. I've always been that way, whether it was starting a new job or even actually when I started dating my partner with his line of work, I had a gazillion questions and he's so knowledgeable with what he does. So sometimes we'll just even be out for a walk and I'm just like picking his brain. I just love learning. And
Right.
I used to, when I was younger, I was very shy and I used to think that people would judge me for not knowing these things. But I started to learn as I started to do this work, like, of course I don't know these things. Why would I know these things? I never had to know these things before. So I'm learning as I go, right? And that is exciting. And I ask all the questions now, right? So whether it's me trying a new product or service, I'm the one who's like asking everything because I just want to know about it. I just want to learn. So don't shy away from asking questions either. And don't shy away from not being the smartest person in the room. There's a lot to be said for learning from other people like Carla was talking about.
Right. And they say surround yourself with people that emulate what you want to be. And why?
Mm,
Because we learn, because we don't get in our comfort zone, and it stretches us.
yeah.
And new friendships that have facets that we aren't used to do make us learn and grow so much. Like mine and Shanda's friendship has grown me tremendously, because we are not only are we open and honest, but we both have similar experiences and different experiences. And so the beauty of not being the smartest person in the room is that you're like, I would have never even thought of that to learn
Mm,
it. Like, I love to learn and research. And sometimes I have to remind myself to step into those rooms and make new friendships in other places where you can grow,
mhm.
because it's not only about our comfort zone, but where we want to head. Because just visualizing where we want to be without taking that action, because being in those rooms motivates us to take action.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing too that I want to add to the rooms, the friendship, that type of thing, surrounding yourself with people that you want to be like, right? Who are doing the things that you want to do. Also, looking around the room and looking for like, is the room diverse? Meaning, are there different types of people from all different backgrounds, all different walks of
Right.
life? You want to be in a room that's diverse. And by room, this is just like a metaphor for whatever coaching room, meeting room, group of
Communities.
friends, communities. Yeah. But making sure that it's diverse, right? Because again, we learn through each other. We learn through stories. This has been something through our evolution for millennia, right? That is how we learn best is through stories. Stories come typically from personal experience or passed down information. So
Right.
surround yourself with people who aren't like you. And I
Yeah.
find that fascinating because again, I just love learning about different cultures and different walks of life and
Right.
as much as I can about humans, and it fascinates me. So embrace the difference, right? Because we're all so unique in so many different ways. So get yourself in front of more people who are different than you. So you could be stretched into areas that you might not even know were available to you to stretch into.
Right. Because it feeds and nurtures you in a different way. And so
Absolutely.
that's what we're talking about. Friendships is like, remember the relationships that feed and nurture you. And it's not just about somebody who makes you feel comfortable where you're at. It's somebody who stretches you, somebody
Mm,
who, I would not come to Shanda with something thinking that she's not going to ask me questions.
mm,
She's not going to just coddle me where I'm at to
mm.
stay where I'm at, right? She's
Right.
going to ask me questions so I can stretch and grow and heal in ways that I didn't expect to. And
Yeah.
those are what friendships do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think that is such a beautiful thing to end on. Like, be that friend that helps your friends grow. And sometimes, my friend, that means saying the hard things, saying the uncomfortable things. But know that, like, when you give your honest feedback to your friends, you're creating a deeper connection and you're creating that opportunity for growth and you're
Right.
creating that intimacy with that person too. So hold on to those ideas even when it feels scary because it's always worth it in the end, right? And I think one more thing I want to add to that is that if you're doing it for them and not for yourself, right? When we're giving feedback and we are being real with the people, we're doing it to be in service to them and not because we're going to get somewhere from it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, if you feel like somebody could benefit from this episode, don't forget to share
Mm,
because Chanda and I share from our hearts to teach you all, to support you all, and to help you grow to create the life you want. So, share. This is episode 69. There are 68 other episodes with golden nuggets. So, just remember that if there's any of the things that we say, topics, that it can be something that helps somebody, and that's what we're here for.
mm.
And we are going to let you go. So bye bye for now.